Hello everybody out there in Bourbon Real Talk land. I'm Randy Sullivan.
And I'm Wes Ireton.
And you're going to be seeing more of Wes because Wes is going to be working on production for the podcast. And what we're going to be talking about today are 5 tips for bourbon beginners.
I used to be one and still one. So these are things that we've come up with together and pulled some friends of ours to see, hey, when you were getting started, what are some things you wish you knew then that you know now? So let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
All right, so Randy, let's start with one of the first and largest questions. What bottles do I go out and buy right from the beginning?
Okay. Well, one thing that I recommend people do is they need to start with base level shelf products, okay? We're not trying to get started with the allocated stuff because it's too much effort. There's too much hype around it. I want you to go out and really focus on shelf available products. And I want you to probably, if you want to learn about bourbon, stick with Kentucky and get base level products from different major distilleries. So I want you to go get a Woodford, I want you to get a Makers, I want you to get a 1792, I want you to get a Elijah Craig, an Evan Williams, a Wild Turkey. I want you to get those base level products. And when you're tasting them and when you drink, and you drink whenever you drink, I'm not gonna suggest how often people should drink, but when you do drink, I don't want you to get a giant 2-ounce pour. I want you to get a very small pour and I want you to try different things in a row, and I want you to be concentrating on what you're tasting that's different, and that's gonna help you learn what it is that you like.
Yeah, which actually brings us to tip number 2. Now, we all know that there's a hype train.
Mm-hmm.
Whoop, whoop. There's a hype train.
Hype train for sure.
You've got the Blanton's hype train. You've got all the BTAC hype train. You've got the Caboose coming in there, which is probably your Pappy's, which is, what everybody's chasing, these rare bottles. Now, what's your advice to new people getting started in the bourbon community when all they hear about are these big rare bottles that they should be chasing?
I would probably recommend to hold off on following the hype train in the beginning. The power of suggestion is a very powerful force in the human mind. And it can actually, in my opinion, cause you to form some beliefs about your palate and what you like and what you don't like that are counterproductive. And that's why I want you to stick with the shelf available products. That's why I want you to stick with the basic things. Now, am I suggesting that if you walk into a liquor store and they offer you a bottle that you know is rare or allocated, that you turn it down? Absolutely not. But I am saying that, don't spend too much time trying to find those bottles in the beginning. Really concentrate on finding what it is that you like and not being influenced by the masses out there that are trying to tell you what's good.
What's going on, Bourbon Real Talk family? I'm Wes, and I'm here to tell you about how you can get involved in supporting the channel. Now, we get asked all the time, hey man, we love your content. We love what you're doing. We love the knowledge that you're dropping on us. How can we support the channel? Well, here's the way you can do that. Head over to our website, bourbonrealtalk.com, and you can find every single bit of swag that every bourbon lover needs. We've got shirts for him, shirts for her, wee Glens, big Glens, aroma kits, Glen holders. I mean, there's no shortage of good gifts to give to the bourbon lovers in your life. So after the episode, head over to the shop and see if there's anything there that you can pick up for yourself or for a friend. And if not, just enjoy the content that we're putting out. We're just happy to have you as a listener. Tip number 3. Randy, what do we do about the haters?
We ignore the haters. When you get involved, you're gonna start Googling, you're gonna be searching, you're trying to learn things. And probably the bottle that comes to mind is like, Willet Pot Still, right? It's a beautiful bottle. A lot of new people buy it.
Looks nice.
It looks nice. And when people see that bottle, they're like, oh, wow, fancy. Let me get some of that. And then inevitably they'll post a picture of it, and it's kind of become like a lightning rod for experienced whiskey drinkers. They see that bottle and they go, oh, a new person that I can make fun of so that I look cool in front of my friends.
Yeah, cut that out.
And if you're making fun of people for what it is that they're drinking, you should stop, 1. And 2, don't let those people influence you.
Right.
Because the one thing that you need to do as a new whiskey drinker is to drink what you like. And it doesn't matter whether or not other people like it. And the truth is, anytime I hear somebody say something is hot garbage or it's a drain pour or any of that negative feedback, if it's a major, widely distributed product, there's no way that it's actually that bad.
Right.
As somebody who's actually trying to grow a brand of whiskey, the amount of effort and buy-in that you have to have from the public at large to be able to be distributed in all 50 states in the United States means for sure that there's a huge percentage of the population that think your product is at least worth what you're charging for it.
Right.
And so for somebody to say something that's that widely distributed is hot garbage, there's a bigger chance that their mommy didn't hold them enough when they were a baby than it is that their palate is sophisticated enough to detect that when no one else can.
Sick burn. Tip number 4, okay? There's a lot of content out there. Of course, there's YouTubes, there's books, there's documentaries. Would you recommend that a beginner kind of look there first when they're trying to learn a little bit more about the bourbon?
For sure. I mean, information there's so much available in our information age with the internet. I think that what you need to do is all of those little questions and things that pop up in your mind, you should Google it, you should search it on YouTube, you should find content, you should solve one small problem at a time, right? Because every time you have a question and you learn the answer, it's going to lead you to another point that you go, well, if this is true and that is true, then what does this mean, right?
Yeah.
And you just go down that rabbit hole, and over time you'll figure out which channels deliver content to you in a way that you enjoy, and it speaks to you. But if you're a reader, I strongly recommend Fred Minnick. And he can be a bit of a controversial figure, especially in the whiskey enthusiast world. But I mean, the man's a legend. He was one of the first full-time bourbon writers in modern history. And he wrote a book that I read called Bourbon, The Rise, Fall, and Rebirth of an American Whiskey. And that was kind of my entry point, into really delving deep into understanding the history of bourbon. And to be honest, without that book, I'm not sure that I would even have this channel. And then he wrote another book called Bourbon Curious that helps, new people get started. So I'd recommend either of those books if somebody wants to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fifth and final tip that we have for bourbon beginners is to join a community of fellow bourbon lovers. Randy, we and you specifically have been a major part of Some Would Say Whiskey. And so, of course, if you're not a member on the Facebook group, Some Would Say Whiskey, absolutely go look it up and join today, because there is a wealth of knowledge just there.
Sure.
But also, there's so many of those communities.
Sure. Well, and that's one of the things that I try to encourage, especially somebody who's wanting to get into the hobby, is there's probably a local whiskey club, and it's administered through Facebook. So I can't tell you how many viewers on YouTube have reached out to me and said, like, I can't get involved because I'm not on Facebook. I also can't tell you how many people have come to my house and drank with pick up with pours or whatever from Some Would Say Whiskey who said, I'm only on Facebook because of whiskey. And I'll tell you, I'm only on Facebook because of whiskey, right? I mean, a little bit because I'm a real estate agent too, but the reality of this situation is it's worth it for you to have a profile, even if you redact part of your name or whatever so people can't find you, so that you can get involved. And I strongly encourage people to find a local community, because it's going to be easier for you to get together with other local people, to share drams with each other, to share information with one another. But I will warn you that there are a lot of Facebook-based whiskey community pages that are basically dominated by trolls who use the platform to get attention for themselves by being ugly to other people online. Yeah. And so watch out for that. Yeah. But, other than that, you should definitely be involved. And if you're starting to see that the vibe is not for you, just move on and find another one. Yeah. And if you can't find any, then you're always welcome to join Some Would Say Whiskey. I've worked very hard to make that a source of information and sharing a community and not about trolls. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And my biggest thing when it comes to whiskey is something that I tell everyone, is that whiskey tastes better when enjoyed with other people.
Sure.
To me. And that's just the thing about it. And that's really the philosophy behind the show, is using bourbon to bring people together.
Sure.
Which is, if you're not using bourbon, enjoy it how you want to.
Sure.
Enjoy it at home alone or with your family. But by all means, search out other fellow bourbon lovers and enjoy it together.
Sure. You remind me of something. Can I throw in a 6th bonus tip?
Absolutely.
Okay, so 6th bonus tip. Whiskey is a strong distilled spirit, and we have to be careful. Okay.
Absolutely.
And while I do encourage people to get involved with the community and to experiment and explore their palate and all that stuff, you have to decide what's right for you with regard to how much alcohol is safe for you to drink. And whiskey actually numbs the part of your brain that causes you to feel suspicious, right? It can help you to relax. It can help relieve anxiety. And pursuing those things, especially for a stressed out adult, can sometimes lead to drinking problems. And so while we are given recommendations for beginners, we want you to make your own decision about how much and how often you drink. Absolutely. And you pursue that on your own. I won't make recommendations for you. Everybody's different. Yeah. But while we're talking about community, I'd like to share a little bit about the philosophy of this page. And what we're about is bringing people together. And that's something that's really near and dear to my heart, because I lost my brother to suicide in 2014. And in the aftermath of that, I was searching out ways to help other people who may have been feeling as alone as he was to feel connected, so that they would know that they were loved. And at the same time, my passion for bourbon started to grow, and I started to observe the connective power of whiskey and how it seemed to bring people together, even people of different walks of life, different ideological views. And that was part of the impetus for me wanting to start this channel, is to help people feel connected, so they wouldn't feel alone and they would know that they were loved. And during that pursuit, I started to observe, and I made reference to it earlier, that there are all types of people on social media that will say very ugly things to people that they don't really know. And then it dawned on me that if those people can show that much hate towards someone they don't know, it's just as easy for me to show love to someone that I don't really know. Sure. And that's why I end every podcast the same way, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.
We need whiskey.
Yeah, we do.
We don't have any whiskey.
What kind of shitty whiskey channel doesn't have whiskey in the video?
So tip number 1 for beginners is to drink actual bourbon.
Yeah. And also pace yourself.
Yes.
Because when you're filming, sometimes you start at 8 a.m. Maybe I was born with too many words inside my brain, and that's why I talk too much.
There are a lot of words in there, I'm not going to lie.
They have to come out. That's not what we're talking about. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
we're talking about that. Damn.
We're talking about that.
We record multiple episodes when we do this, and sometimes I get confused.
Okay, should we start over?
So what we're going to talk... Okay. Stop laughing.
All right, now that we know what we're doing.
Right.
Soundwell Music.